Hi, my name is Gabe, Product Manager at R3. Today I'm joined by Ante from our engineering team to take you through an upcoming feature of Corda 4.6, Membership on Corda. In this brief video, we will take you through the reasons why we're introducing this feature, what example and use cases we had in mind in designing it, and what are the problems we expect developers and operators to solve with membership. Ante will take you through a technical walkthrough of the feature and a demo to show it in action. So make sure to stick around to the end of the video to see that. Let's jump right into it. Our experience of production Corda deployments is that application developers and operators often find themselves needing to represent and manage additional identity information about participants' nodes and their relationships in a Corda network. For example, different users of an application may take on different roles or be permitted to perform different operations. Maybe only some participants of a shared Corda network are allowed to use certain applications, or perhaps within a given application, only certain participants can discover identity metadata about one another. Once you overlay this distributed access control concept on top of a Corda app, you can really imagine a permutation of scenarios that suddenly becomes viable. On top of these realizations, we also observed that in many production deployments, the role of operating a distributed application that is governing its membership, perhaps providing some value-add services, and the more traditional software development role are not always performed by the same organization. So optional independence between those two concepts is desirable. And this is really what led us to introduce membership on Corda. This is a new core concept to make it possible to represent and manage additional identity attributes about nodes and offer the ability for Corda app developers to query for them in a way that is independent of their provenance and standardized. So in short, what does membership solve for? Well, starting from 4.6 and designing with your application or business network, whether that is for a shared Corda network or your dedicated private network, you can now answer the following questions with membership. What other metadata is required to identify a user in your specific context? And this is on top of the basic network identity of Corda. What specific identity information do you want to attach to a node so that you can later refer to and drive conditional logic based on it? Then, what, if any, relationships or groups do you want to represent in your application or business network? And you can do that in a way where you can leverage across multiple applications as your business network grows. And then finally, what entitlements do you want to drive as an application developer based on this metadata that you just defined? Now, once those three questions are defined and answered, then the provided membership implementation in Corda can be either adopted, so if all requirements are met by it, you can just take it as it is, or adapt it and extend it to meet any identity information you might wish to represent. And finally, as an application developer that wants to run their application in a given business network, they can now take the given membership attestation specifications of that business network and integrate it with a standard interface to query for it and drive any relevant logic that might be applicable in that given case. Right, so enough talking about the concept, and let me hand it over to Ante to give you a closer look under the hood on how we implemented it in what we call business network extension, and an example to put more substance around it. So Ante, over to you.
Thank you, Gabe, for this nice introduction. We're going to now showcase the actual sample usage of the business network's extension solution, first from the point of view of a business network operator, and second from the view of the Corda app integrator. The sample we are going to showcase is basically the Corda app between the banks that are issuing loans to each other. So let's see first the list of flows, so list of administrative flows that business network operator can start. So if we look inside this list and look into the highlighted flows, We can see there is a whole bunch of them, and we're gonna guide you through each of them in the process of firstly creating the business network, adding new members inside, modifying their own related membership data, and on top of that we are going to run the sample corda to show how the integration with business network extension is done. So in order to create a business network operator must run create business network flow. So after that flow is finished, the new business network is created. One more thing before we continue to see what is the state of the vault is that this create business network flow also has the additional arguments, so the business network operator can specify what is the custom ID of their network if they don't want it to be just randomly generated, and what will be the name of the initial group that will be created and its custom ID. Also, each of these administrative flows can use the optional notary argument to specify which notary is going to notarize the transactions. So let's now take a look inside the vault of the business network operator. So inside the vault we can see that two states have been issued on the ledger. First state is a membership state representing the membership of the creator of the business network, the BNO itself. And we can see that membership state has a lot of fields inside, and now we're going to go through each one of those. So first field represents the identity of the membership, which is split into two parts. First part is the standard corda identity, which is basically the party object represented by X509 certificate. And the second one is optional additional custom identity that business network operators or business network designers can define as per their own design of their business network identity. This type of identity, we call it business identity. We can see here also the ID of the network this membership is associated with. The status, membership can be in following three statuses. First status is a pending status. That status indicates that membership is in a request status, and an authorized party, in this case BNO, needs to activate it or suspend it or even permanently revoke it. The other status that we can see here is the active status. The memberships in this status can run the administrative flows inside the business network if they have authorization to do that. And we have the third status, this is the suspended status. This is in one way a term of temporary revocation, in which business network members are not allowed to do any administrative operation until they are reactivated again. So suspended membership can be reactivated again. Each membership state also has a set of roles associated to it, and each of the roles is consisted of certain permissions. And BNO, when it creates the business network, it automatically gains something that we call a BNO role. This is the role that has the permissions to run all of the administrative flows over the business network. We also have the issuer field. This field tells you basically which party issued the membership state. And we have additional fields which tell when was the membership state first issued, when was it last modified. As we can see, we are modeling this as a linear state, so it has the linear ID unique identifier. The other state that is issued on the ledger is the group state. So membership state represents all the attributes of a membership of a certain member of a business network, but the business network with only that type of object cannot function in terms of privacy, because each of the member will be able to see all the other members of the business network. So, for instance, the following scenario can't be achieved. And that is, for instance, let's say that you're running an insurance company and you're a BNO and you want to have business with multiple of your clients inside your business network. However, you don't want your clients to be visible between each other. Group states come to mitigate this issue, and basically in that case you would just create a multiple new different groups in which each of them you would put associated client, and clients from different groups cannot see each other. So basically a member can only see the other members that are participants of the group that they are part of. So group state has following fields. First of them is the ID of the network it is part of. We have also the optional field, so we can represent a group in a more nice way than just by a linear ID. So we can represent it also by a name, which must be unique. We have also the issuer field. We have also the fields that indicate when the group state was first issued and when was it last modified. And as we said, we represent the group state as a linear state. The list of participants is the reused basically field of the contract state, but we also conveniently use it to store all the members of the group. Let's now see how we would onboard the new members inside the business network. So let's go to the node of Bank B and see how a node initiates a membership request. It initiates it by running a request membership flow. So the first argument that party needs to specify is basically the identity of authorized party, in this case a BNO. That identity in this case is Bank A. It also needs to specify the ID of the network it wants to join. It can also additionally specify the business identity, so the custom identity that we've been talking about that it wants to assume. Now we're going to put it in a default as a null. And it can also specify the notary that will notarize this membership state's issuance. We will also do that for a Bank C. Okay, both flows have successfully finished. Let's now see what is the state of BNO's ledger. We can see now that there are two additional states on the ledger. Those are the membership states representing the Bank B and Bank C. We can see that both of the states are in a pending status. So right now, in order to fully onboard those new pending memberships, BNO must activate those two membership states. And it does it by usage of activate membership flow. First argument that it needs to specify is the ID of the membership it wants to activate. So let's first copy over the Bank B ID. And it can specify an optional notary argument that will move this transaction, that will notarize the transaction, that will move this membership state from pending to active status. If we specify notary argument as a null, the first notary from the notary whitelist in network parameters will be used. Okay, we activated the first membership. Let's activate the Bank C's membership. Okay, let's now look at the situation inside the vault. Now we can see that both Bank B's membership is active and Bank C's membership is active. Let's take a peek also inside the Bank B's and Bank C's vault. We can see that they only have one state present there. So that is a state representing their own membership. Let's see that also on a Bank C's vault. We can see that we only have a state representing Bank C's membership. Those two members still can't see the other members' memberships because they haven't been part of any group that is inside the business network. And if you recall, we specified a rule that all of the members can only see the participants of the groups that they are part of. So we need to add them in that initial group that was created at the beginning of this demo session. Okay? How we do that? We need to modify that group to add the new participants, and we use modify group flow. First, we need to specify the ID of the group we want to modify. So we're going to copy over the ID of the group state. We can specify also the custom name that we want to associate with that group. Let's call it, in this case, a default group. We can omit this argument by just specifying it as null. And we need to specify the participants of the new group. So basically we need to specify all of the IDs of the new memberships that will be inside that group. First, let's move over the ID of the BNO, so Bank A. Then we're going to move the ID of Bank B and the Bank C. And as per usual, we can always specify the optional notary argument to notarize that group changing transaction. Flow has successfully finished. Now let's look into the vaults of all the parties. We can see the first thing right now that all of the membership states participant field has changed. So now all the business network members are participants of all membership state. This is because they're now part of a same default initial group. That means that they need to be able to observe each other, and modify group flow also took care of that, of the modification of participants of all membership states. We can see here also that now group participants are Bank A, B, and C. If we look inside the vaults of the other banks, we can see that situation is completely equal because they can see each other because they're in the same group. Also Bank C, same situation. So this concludes the initial part, so the first part of this demo where we show the administrative operations that BNO can take over the business network members and groups. Let's see what other operations we didn't cover but are available. So those are basically suspension of the membership. As we said, this moves the membership status to a suspended status. There is also the revocation of membership. This is basically a permanent revocation in which member cannot be reactivated again. It needs to go again through that request and activation process. We can also modify roles of membership. So basically, for instance, we can add BNO role to any other member of the business network. We can also define our own custom roles with our own custom permissions that we are going to show shortly in the custom core app, and we can assign them to different members of the business network. We showed modification of groups. We can also modify the custom business identity of the members. We're going to also showcase that shortly in the bank core app. We can delete the groups, We can also create new groups to, for instance, cover the scenario with privacy that we talked before with insurance company. Okay, and we can also assign the BNO role and a member role. To a membership, BNO role represents a role, as you said, that has all the administrative permissions. Member role is a role that doesn't have any administrative permissions given to it. Let's now take a look in a showcase where we're going to show you the sample core app that uses Business Network's extension solutions inside it. So to reiterate, that core app shows you the usage of flows which issue loans from one bank to another. So we have two flows specifically made for that. Issue loan flow, which issues a loan from one bank to another, and settle loan flow, in which the other bank can settle a certain amount of that loan. Let's try to initiate issue loan flow. So as we can see, the argument that we need to provide is the first network ID, so ID of the network we are doing operations in. We need to specify the identity of the borrower, let that be bank B, and the amount of the loan, let's say it's 10. And we can see right now that this flow failed. Why? Because bank A doesn't have a business identity, which is a bank identity. So as we said that we're going to simulate the usage of business network extensions for this custom core app. And in this custom core app, we specify that each bank needs to have a business identity, which is basically the business identifier code, so Swift ID for the banks. So that's how we model business identity in this case. We created a custom flow inside that core app to assign business identifier code to each party. So we need to specify the ID of the membership. We want to give the business identifier code. So first, let's assign it to bank A. Let it be, in this case, bank GB00. And again, we have an optional notary argument. Okay. Let's assign BIC also to the bank B, because both of the banks need to have BIC in order to properly issue loan from one to each other. Okay, let's see now the state of the ledger. So basically, we can see now that bank B's custom business identity has been changed and has this BIC that we specified, and also the same thing for bank A. Let's now try to run the issue loan flow. We can see that it fails again. Why? Because bank A is not authorized to issue a loan in this business network. And it is not authorized because we defined our own custom permission to issue loans in the business network. So let's look again inside the flow list. We can see that we created another custom flow in which we add something we call loan issuer role to a party. We need to specify ID of the network we're in. And we can specify the optional auto argument. This dummy flow just self-assigns the role to a business network member. Okay, so now the bank A has loan issue role associated to it. Let's now just take one note. Let's try to run that flow from the bank B's node, and we can see this will fail because bank B is not a BNO and it doesn't have a permission to run the modify roles flow. So it doesn't have that administrative permission, so only bank A can run that flow because it is a BNO. And let's now try to finally issue a loan. The flow is successfully finished. Let's see the state on the ledger. We can see that we have a new state on the ledger that is a loan state, which basically says who is lender, who is borrower. It says which is the amount, and it says what is the ID of the network where the loan has been issued. It is also a linear state, so we can track its progress. And let's now try to settle the flow between two parties. So we do that by running settle loan flow. We need to specify the ID of the loan and the amount we want to settle. Let it be 5. So now only 5 is the amount that we need to settle. Before we do that, let's try to run again the next scenario. Let's suspend the Bank B's membership. Okay. So membership of Bank B is suspended. Let's see what happens when Bank B tries to settle a loan now. We can see that contract verification has failed. So basically, the contract verification requirement says that borrower must be an active member of a business network. So in order to mitigate that, BNO can reactivate its membership. Here we showed basically how a custom corda integrator can put the constraints that only active members can transact in their corda app. Okay, now Bank B's membership is again active. And when it tries to settle that amount, we see that now it has successfully settled it because it passed all of the contract verification. So this was all basically regarding the demo of the sample corda app using Business Network Extension solution. Let's now take a peek inside how are these constraints integrated inside the custom corda app. So let's take a look first inside the implementation of issue loan flow. We can see first here that we have business network verification method, in which we can see how we fetch the memberships and perform checks over it. We use something we called BN service, which exposes all the methods for retrieving memberships from the vault and groups. And in this case, we fetch the membership of a lender. We check whether it's active. We check whether it has a bank identity, which is basically a BIC. And we check if it has the can issue loan permission. This is a custom permission we define for this use case. We do the same thing, so checking if it's in active status and checking if it has the bank identity for borrower party. So this was the first type of the approach we showed for implementing the constraints for the business networks. This is an approach using the full flow constraints implementation. Let's see the other approach you can take in settle loan flow. This flow uses reference states which are passed to a contract verification logic to check the same conditions on memberships. Let's take a peek inside that loan contract, and we can see here that we fetch the reference states of the transaction. We ensure that they are in a correct number and a correct type, so they are membership states. And then we check basically the similar things we did in the issue loan flow. So we check whether the membership is active, whether it has a bank identity, and so on. Before we wrap this up, there is one last thing I would like to mention regarding the custom business identities we used, custom roles and custom permissions. So let's see how that is easily done in this business network extension model. So in order to implement the custom business network identity, the only thing the user needs to do is create a new Corda serializable class that implements BN identity interface we provide. Similar thing it needs to do for custom permissions. It needs to implement the BN permission interface. And similar thing can be done also for roles. It needs to extend a BN role class which has fields for its name and a set of permission it is granted. So this wraps up whole business network extension showcase. So let's recap what we've done in this video. First, we covered the demo around how administrative roles over business networks are used and how integration can be done with custom Corda apps. We show the actual implementation of it and the approaches of flow-specific constraints and the other approach of using the reference state for contract verification. And in the end, we showed how to define your own custom business identity, permission, and roles. I hope you found this video useful for your own business network creation and integration with custom Corda apps, and the official documentation will shortly be released as part of standard Corda documentation pages. Thank you for your time.